Good morning, everyone. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. Hope your Friday is off to a fantastic start. You're looking at Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, who is about to sign legislation. The details here are that, not legislation, he is signing an executive order to reduce gun violence. This executive order, according to the governor's office, strengthens the gun violence reduction efforts of the executive branch agencies and programs through coordinating activities of the existing boards, commissions, and departments focused on improving public safety and public health. He's being joined by the Pennsylvania Commission of Crime and Delinquency Chair, Charles Ramsey. I believe that's the former police commissioner. Let's listen into the governor's remarks here.
Officers hostage, and he terrorized countless other families during a standoff that lasted late into the night. Just a side thing, I mean, that was a terrible example of really bad things that can be done, but it was just another event in a long string of events. On Wednesday, a 20-year-old was shot and killed in South Philadelphia. Unfortunately, gun violence is just too much an ordinary part. It didn't make the front page as the shooter did on Wednesday, but it's too much of a part of our communities like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, York, my own small town. We have suffered too much of this. The point is that man in Philadelphia had enough ammunition and weapons to hold dozens of Philadelphia police officers at bay for almost 8 hours. Why was that? Why would anyone need that? What's more, countless acts of gun violence occurred across the Commonwealth. As I said, on the same day, a 20-year-old was shot and killed in South Philadelphia. We need to do something to stop gun violence all across Pennsylvania. Too many Pennsylvanians have died from gun violence. Too many have lost loved ones to gun violence. Too many live every day in fear of being shot on the sidewalk, in their neighborhood, in a grocery store, at school, or at a concert. We need to protect all of our lives, everywhere in Pennsylvania. Last week I stood in the rotunda and I called for action. We need to fix our weak gun laws in Pennsylvania and pass reforms focused on increasing safety and reducing danger to our citizens. But with each day that passes, alarming numbers of Pennsylvanians are losing their lives to gun violence. Because every day we delay in doing this, it's another day where we lose the right to live our lives free of fear that is surrounding our lack of action. So the executive order I'm signing is not an impulsive decision made in the wake of the recent mass shootings. Rather, it's the result of months of work by my administration, working with partners to find real, tangible solutions that focus on reducing gun violence, on reducing the number of people killed and terrorized by guns in our Commonwealth. The Second Amendment does not supersede the inalienable right we all have to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every human being, every Pennsylvanian is endowed with these rights, and it's my duty, and it's all of our duty, to protect them for every Pennsylvanian. That's what this executive order is all about. I'm starting by announcing Charles Ramsey, and I ask you today whether you like to be called Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and he said Charles. So, Charles Ramsey, who's the current chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, but as you know, he was also the former police commissioner in Philadelphia. He's going to be my new special advisor charged with coordinating and leading our gun reform effort. This executive order also establishes the Office of Gun Violence Prevention within the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency and the Division of Violence Prevention within the Department of Health. These two new offices will work together to tackle gun violence from both the gun safety and a public health perspective. Together, they will target three key areas of gun violence. First, community gun violence. Second, mass shootings. Third, domestic gun violence and suicides. Let me start with the first one. Community gun violence is going to be addressed through increased training for state and municipal police and data sharing, which will help us identify trends and create tailored solutions to each community's needs. We will work on prevention tactics like increasing school emotional, social, and behavioral supports and bolstering evidence-based juvenile justice programs. And will support and expand municipal gun buyback programs through the Pennsylvania State Police to reduce the number of unwanted guns in our communities. Second, we will deal with mass shootings by holding more active shooter training for state and municipal police and state agencies. We will also use prevention tactics by working with the Pennsylvania State Police again to put a greater focus on domestic terrorism and a see something, send something campaign encouraging people to report suspicions or of potential mass shootings by text message. I'm also enrolling Pennsylvania in the States for Gun Safety Coalition, which is a multi-state partnership that shares information and conducts research to combat gun violence. Finally, we will tackle gun domestic violence and suicides. I'm directing the Suicide Prevention Task Force to make immediate recommendations on steps to reduce suicides by gun. Their work will be supplemented by data collected by a new suicide death review team within our Department of Health. The ultimate outcome of this is to determine what we can do as a Commonwealth to decrease deaths by suicide. Our agencies will build on mental health stigma campaigns to encourage Pennsylvanians to seek treatment. Most people with mental illness are not violent, but for those individuals who are struggling with mental illness and show an increased risk of violence, early identification, early intervention, and evidence-based mental health treatments are key. We will also build up the Student Assistance Program, a critical program that allows educators who work with students every day to make mental health referrals. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention will also be charged with coordinating a system of focused police deterrence in neighborhoods and cities where violence is most extreme. This executive order also establishes the Special Counsel on Gun Violence within the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. This council will meet within 60 days of the signing of this executive order and will make recommendations to the special advisor and the PCCD on ways to reduce incidents of gun violence in Pennsylvania. It will be comprised of agency secretaries, designees from each of the PCCD's existing subcommittees, and members of the General Assembly. We will rely on them to include gun owners, victims of gun-related violence, criminal justice experts, and healthcare practitioners in the discussion around practical recommendations to enhance this executive order. To better understand the scope of gun violence, including contributing factors, we'll be establishing a violence data dashboard similar to the opioid data dashboard. We'll partner with state universities to research the cause and consequences of gun violence and identify trends to help us better predict and prevent gun violence from happening anywhere in Pennsylvania. And I will be directing every state department to engage in an effort to combat the systemic causes of violence, including poverty, hopelessness, a lack of economic opportunities, mental and behavioral health supports. All of the actions I'm taking today strike a balance between freedom and safety. Finally, I cannot work alone in this endeavor, and I'm asking for the support of the General Assembly to make the legislative changes necessary to protect the lives of all Pennsylvanians. First, I will seek legislation to mandate the reporting of lost or stolen guns so that we can cut down on the number of illegal gun sales and keep guns out of the hands of known criminals like the Philadelphia shooter. Second, I'm asking for the General Assembly to pursue safe storage legislation so people who are in danger of harming themselves or others cannot gain access in an easy way to guns. Third, I will continue to push for the swift passage of the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act. It's also known as the Red Flag Law. And last, I will continue to push for state-level universal background checks on all gun purchases and other common-sense gun violence reduction legislation. It's my honor and my duty to guide our Commonwealth. I'm proud to be governor. By making and finding the right middle ground here, I think we can create the best Pennsylvania. We want a good Pennsylvania for everybody, one that recognizes the rights embedded in the Second Amendment, but also one that recognizes all of our rights to live free of fear. The conversation of where this middle ground where this important middle ground lies is important. It's long, long overdue. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with the legislature, with the people of Pennsylvania, as we move into the start of the fall session. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce Commissioner Chairman Charles Ramsey, who unfortunately is going to have to leave right after he speaks. But I really appreciate you doing what you're doing. Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you very much, Governor. It's really an honor to serve on such a vital, important issue as dealing with gun violence. And also, I want to thank you for coming up with this strategy, which I believe is unprecedented at the state level, to address this issue, not just as a law enforcement or criminal justice issue, but as a public health issue as well. And I promise we will meet all the deadlines and give you something that is actionable, that can really improve the quality of safety and security throughout the Commonwealth. You know, this whole issue of mass shootings is normally what gets national attention, whether it's El Paso or Dayton or Pittsburgh. It's incidents like that where the national media comes out and for a day or two, they'll spend time actually talking about gun violence in America. But the reality is mass shootings take place every day on the streets of our city, across the entire country. One person, two people here, three over there. All life has value. You don't have to lose it in large quantities before we start to pay attention to something that is as pressing an issue as gun violence in our communities. Suicide. More people die by suicide than any other means. What about children? I can't tell you how many scenes I've gone to. I've been an active member of law enforcement 47 years, where a young child finds a gun in a home and accidentally pulls the trigger and shoots a sibling or shoots themselves. Tragic. Something has to be done to reduce gun violence, whether it's by criminals, whether it's accidental, whether it's suicide, whatever it is. We need to do everything we can to protect our people here. And Governor, I just want to thank you for taking this step to do it at the state level, because if we wait around for the federal government to do it, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And so doing it here, Pennsylvania, we can be the model for the rest of the country, and we will be the model for the rest of the country. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity. We will not let you down. And thank all of you gathered here today for all the work that you've done in the past and all that you're about to do in the future. So thank you. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce someone who I've had the pleasure of working with for, I guess, 10 years now, and that's our great Senator Anthony Williams. Thank you.
Let me thank a few folks before I make some comments. One, I want to thank the leader of my caucus, Jay Costa, who in June allowed me to circulate a letter on behalf of our Democratic caucus to send to the governor, announcing that Philadelphia was in an epidemic situation with regard to the level of gun violence. And he, as the leader of our caucus, did not have to do that. And so I want to thank him first. Cindy Cashman and Mike Burnell, I don't know where they are, but I want to thank you publicly for, on behalf of the Commonwealth, on behalf of Philadelphia, on behalf of me, who have spent countless hours text, yelling and screaming, and you all acted with dignity and frankly came up with a plan that is extraordinary. I mean extraordinary. And so I want to thank them. And last but not least, our governor. And I will tell you, I'm going to try to make through my comments, but this is emotional. It's emotional for me. This governor has done something that no other elected official in this country has ever done. No president, no governor, no mayor has ever taken the politics out of whether you have a right to have a gun or not and recognize the dignity of human beings is first and most important. And because of that, let us thank this man. Let us thank him right now for his work. Yesterday, a number of elected officials gathered in Philadelphia, as they should have, to comment and demand changes on long-awaited rules regarding our guns. Today, we gather, rather than waiting and reacting, we are acting for the first time on behalf of a nation, and most importantly, on behalf of a very, very scared public. On average, there is a human being who's murdered every single day in Pennsylvania by a gun. These people reside across Pennsylvania. And I will also tell you that, unfortunately, the 5 officers or 6 officers who were shot in that neighborhood, literally the next day, 5 more people were shot. And to the Commissioner's point, this is a long-standing crisis that has not gone recognized by the national press and, frankly, not many people at all. We stood there at a conference talking about the 5 officers, but those 5 people who were murdered or no, shot the same day in the same neighborhood didn't hit the Today Show, the morning shows, or any national press. But they're still human beings. They're not drug dealers. They're not criminals. They're grandmothers. There's parents. There's children who are being murdered every day in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia, Erie, Harrisburg, York, Butler County, Clearfield County have all suffered this epidemic of gun violence, either through suicides, domestic violence, community carnage like we see in Philadelphia. This is a stain on humanity. And the fault line is that what we were required to do constitutionally to protect citizens, American citizens, foreign and domestically, we have failed. We've allowed our perspective on an inanimate object to be the focus of our attention, a gun, as opposed to the human beings that are being sacrificed at the altar of politics. Understand that this message is not about taking your gun. This is about preserving a life. This is not a Democrat nor Republican perspective. This is not an urban nor rural perspective. This is not a black or white. This is about death. Death in a country that is the greatest country in the world that we irresponsibly have not acted upon. This plan talks about all the complex levels that one must engage in if they truly are to reduce this level of gun violence in America. Understand something. There will be those who will react to this press conference and will suggest that, what can you do about it? Well, the same thing you can do about reducing gun violence is the same billions of dollars we spend on cancer. Billions of dollars on cancer. Billions of dollars on getting to the moon. Nothing without a guarantee but a commitment to the dignity and human experience on this earth. That's what this plan represents. It is layered in very sophisticated ways. It touches upon one's mental health, one's desires, one's angers, policing, human services, and community engagement. But most importantly, I want people in my neighborhood to understand tonight, you have a governor and a government which has heard you and is responding and is putting one of the most experienced, sage, wise people in charge, Charles Ramsey, to guide us on this grand experiment. I cannot tell you how grateful we are that Charles Ramsey has decided to come out of retirement again for the 99th time. Okay. To guide us on this experience. But I could not be any more impressed with the person that the governor has chosen. I will close with this. It is my hope and my prayer that I one day can stand at a microphone before I retire to say that we've done some effective work in this measurement of reducing gun violence in America, in Pennsylvania, and certainly in Philadelphia. But as long as this work remains, as long as this crisis exists, all of us will remain vigilant. We will return to the General Assembly to have those debates over what we do with guns. But most importantly today, for the first time in the nation, a single soul has stood up for the true integrity of life. a man that I will always be grateful for, my governor, Tom Wolf. I want to thank him and his staff again for their work. My partner in the Senate, who will be fighting these battles over gun reform legislation that we will all be acting upon, a true leader in the greatest sense of the word, and it has allowed me to pen to paper when it came to those claims and concerns, my friend Senator Jay Costa.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Williams, and I truly appreciate those very kind comments, and it's certainly been a pleasure for me to stand with you in our caucus as you take on the leadership role as it relates to how we address this very important issue. So thank you for your work that you're doing and your consistent commitment to doing better, making certain that we do better collectively. Governor Wolf, thank you for standing up and doing what needs to be done. Folks, let's be clear. There's never been and probably won't be for a long time a more meaningful, more significant executive order penned by any governor in this country than what we're seeing today. Let's be clear. The governor and his team, and I want to thank Commissioner Ramsey for stepping forward to be able to implement what needs to be done in the various programs we're talking about. But when you think about the very thoughtful, comprehensive approach that the governor's taking to try to address this really important issue of gun violence in our Commonwealth, I applaud him and I applaud his folks for the work that they're doing. But more importantly, what's going to happen as we go forward to implement this. It will need the support of so many folks in our community. It'll need the support certainly of the agencies who will be responsible for administering some of the programs that we talked about. It'll be important for our legislative body to work and provide the resources, not just this year, but as we go forward, to make certain that they're able to implement the programs that you're talking about to continue to allow us to remain safe. It's going to be important as I look out and I see moms demand action, and I think about ceasefire and all the organizations that have been working very closely with us to be able to try to make certain that we raise the awareness how important it is for us to address gun violence and address some of the things that the governor's talking about. It's certainly about gun violence in our community, and as Senator Williams talked about, my home community, the city of Pittsburgh, we certainly suffered with our tragedies that were very high profile. But we also recognize day after day after day, when I look at the Post-Gazette or I look at the Tribune Review newspaper when I wake up in the morning, and one of the headlines, one of the stories that came from the night before, some person was shot somewhere in our region. It happens every day. It happens throughout this Commonwealth and our country. This governor, this executive order are going to take steps to address that. So I thank them for being able to do that. But it's also about many other areas. Senator Williams talked about, and the Commissioner talked about suicide. When you think about 2/3 of suicides in this Commonwealth, in this country, are done with guns. Access to these weapons are extremely important to be able to reduce that as much as possible. The investments that we're going to make in mental health, community mental health, making certain that we're able to address and talk to folks and have the idea of what's taking place in our neighborhoods, in our community, and the data that will be coming from that type of interaction with people in our neighborhoods, in our community, is so extremely important to allow us to implement the things that Commissioner Ramsey will be working on. That's what this is about. And on the legislative side, while we've not taken the steps that we should have, we're going to continue to fight on our Senate floors. We do every time we get there, and we talk about what steps we can take as a legislative body to supplement or to complement the work that the governor and this executive order will do. Extreme risk orders, and some of the things that I think 3/4 of the general public recognizes we should be doing. We should take the time to be able to enact these things that are really supportive by the public. Democrats, Republicans, urban, rural, doesn't matter. But things like extreme risk orders. The governor talked about gun buyback programs. We talked about safe storage legislation. We talked about universal background checks. Those are some of the things that we need to be talking about in the legislature, and I call upon my colleagues, as so many others have done over the course of the past several weeks, to stand up, step forward, allow us to have a conversation, a definition about some of these issues and how we move forward. If you don't want to stand up and do it, let those of us who want to work along with the folks who are here today, who I'm so very proud to stand with, let us take the lead. Let us address these issues. Let's get to work and get things done. Governor, thank you for being such a thoughtful way in which you're addressing this, and it's going to be a model for the rest of the country. Thank you. Now, it is my honor to introduce someone who's working in the Senate and while working in the House, who's been an outstanding job as the House Whip, House Democratic Whip, Representative from Philadelphia, Jordan Harris.
Let me first thank Governor Wolf for his action on this today. This is not a first step. Governor, I remember, I think it was almost 2 years ago now, when we walked in Southwest Philadelphia, and I showed you what far too many Philadelphians know, and that's the candles and the teddy bears that are makeshift memorials to the lives that are lost in my city. See, in Philadelphia, when someone loses their life, the community comes together and they put teddy bears and they put candles and handwritten notes to memorialize the life that was lost there. We went there about 2 years ago, and then we sat and we talked with family members that had lost their loved ones to gun violence. We talked to the doctors in the ER who are charged daily with trying to save these lives. We talked to the morticians who have to comfort the family. We talked to the clergymen who have to try to stand and give a word when someone tragically loses their life. We then started the Gun Violence Reduction Initiative, a grant program throughout the state to go to municipalities to help them lower the gun violence that they see in their cities. So I thank you, Governor, not just for today, but for all of the work that you've been doing and that we've been doing to address this issue. But the fact is clear that gun violence is still one of the most prevalent issues in our country. In the city of Philadelphia, we are in a public health crisis. We are under attack when it comes to gun violence. Just this year, so far, our homicide rate is up by 4%. Data has shown us that through July, over the last 5 years, we've had 6,902 people shot in the city of Philadelphia. You know, the definition of mass shootings, according to the Gun Violence Archives, is when 4 or more people are shot in one incident. Well, in my city, just this year, in my city, we've had 8 mass shootings. 8 mass shootings in Philadelphia. 4 people were shot outside of a takeout restaurant along South 31st Street in South Philadelphia. In my district, several blocks from where I live, 4 people were shot. 5 people were shot walking down the street in North Philadelphia on May 10th. On the weekend, there were 28 people shot in 19 different incidents of gun violence in Philadelphia. 6 were shot in one incident, with 1 fatally shot at a graduation party in Southwest Philadelphia. A graduation party. 4 people were shot at the intersection just a few blocks away from my home. 7 people were shot at a cookout in the Overbrook section on July 13th. 6 people were shot, 1 fatally, in Elmwood as they gathered to shoot a music video on July 28th. And yes, we know about the national headlines about what happened to our police officers. And we stand with those brave men and women who work every single day to protect our city. We stand with them. But just 24 hours later, there were 5 people shot only 2 miles away from that incident. No news camera, no national stories picked up that shooting or any of the other ones. So today, the first thing I want to say is to all of the people in Philadelphia, in Erie, in Harrisburg, in York, in Pittsburgh, across this Commonwealth, we see you. We see your pain. Your body, your life is just as valuable as anyone else. And we're standing here with you and for you. You're not invisible, and your life does matter. To all of the mothers and fathers who had to bury their children, we see you. Your life matters, and we value you as well. Now listen, if we put up lost and stolen, if we put up background checks, if we put up an assault ban, I will be the first to run to the floor and cast a yes vote. But here's one thing that I will not do. We cannot abdicate our responsibility to govern. We cannot abdicate our responsibility to stand up, to use our voice, but to also use our action just because we don't have all of the gun laws that we want, because we have some of those laws. And the truth of the matter is, in my city, in those mass shootings, it wasn't an automatic weapon that shot those folks. It was the handguns that we see far too many of in the city of Philadelphia. So I will not abdicate the responsibility that we have to govern today and to protect all of the citizens of Philadelphia and all across this Commonwealth. You know, I was talking on social media to some of my folks, and one of the young men said one of the incidents that happened yesterday wasn't that big of a deal. The people were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And far too often we hear that. Oh, we're sorry what happened. They were just at the wrong place, the wrong time. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you live in the city of Philadelphia, any place, any time could be the wrong place and the wrong time, and that must change. This ain't Democrat or Republican. Let me be clear. I don't care what your political party is. I live in a city where mothers send their kids to school not knowing if they'll come home at night. I live in a city where you can't even sit on your porch safely without ducking and dodging bullets. A few years ago, there was a mother sitting on the porch braiding her baby's hair. Gunshots rang out, and a 3-year-old was shot and killed while her mother was braiding her hair on their porch. I don't care what political party you are part of. I don't care what religious faith you are part of. There has to be something in the moral fiber of all of us that says the blood that is being shattered and the blood that is being shed all over this Commonwealth is enough. And that we have to do something to address the pain and the carnage that far too many of our citizens are feeling. So, Governor, I appreciate and thank you for not just today, but for all of the stuff that we've done. And I apologize because this ain't, the political speech. Like, I gotta go home. I have to go home to a place where my life is not safe. And there's far too many Pennsylvanians doing that on a daily basis. Whatever it takes, whatever we have to do, wherever we will have to go, I will go. I will take any and everyone that wants to go, because this must stop. It must end. There are far too many victims. There are far too many people who have lost their life to gun violence in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Time is out for the talk. We have to do action, and we have to do it now. And I'm so thankful that it starts with our governor and all of you who have been working on this issue. God bless you. Thank you. Sorry. Representative Dan Frankel from Allegheny County.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you to my colleagues. I think you get a sense of the depth of importance to this, how this issue resonates with my colleagues, and that's a reflection of how it resonates with our constituents and the people of Pennsylvania. I want to thank my colleagues who are here today, who have been champions on this issue, and I want to single out one particular person, our newest member of the Pennsylvania Democratic Caucus, Mavita Johnson-Harrell, who is the co-chair of the PA Safe Caucus, a group of legislators, many of whom are here today, who are working on a gun safety agenda. And she knows personally, from her own experience with her family, what this issue means and how it's impacted her and her community. And I think you've heard that from everybody. My community, Jay Costa's community, experienced a tragedy of enormous proportions in one of those mass shootings that we experienced back on October 27th, 2018, 10 months ago, coming up to that anniversary. And I will tell you that when I go to speak to my constituents, when I go to speak around the state, between what took place in Pittsburgh, what takes place daily on our streets, the mass shootings in Allentown and Philadelphia, what took place yesterday in Philadelphia with our police officers, the one thing I hear consistently is, what are you going to do about it? What are you, our elected officials, going to do about it? The people of Pennsylvania are begging us to do something to protect them from gun violence. And today, Governor Wolf answered that call. Thank you, Governor Wolf. By collaborating between government agencies, collecting and analyzing data, and launching public education campaigns, this administration is addressing gun violence as an emergency-level public health crisis. With these executive orders, our governor is marshaling every possible administrative tool to reduce our shameful levels of death and injury due to gun violence. And I want to make sure that people understand that in our cities, which experience this every day, we also have this in rural areas. The rates of gun death in our rural areas are exactly the same as they are in urban areas. They're just from different reasons. In our rural areas, it's from suicide. So we have an interest across this. This should be bipartisan. It is not about urban versus rural. We are in this together. I believe that these measures that the governor is proposing today, while falling short of what I think we should be doing as a legislature, will save lives, but they do not take the place of the reforms that the General Assembly has refused to take up. We currently have about 24 reasonable, common sense reform bills languishing in the House without so much as a committee hearing. There is so much more the Pennsylvania legislature can do to prevent tragedies. We could make it possible to temporarily remove guns from the grasp of people in crisis. We could make background checks truly universal, or we could simply allow municipalities to decide what gun laws are right for their communities. And I should also mention, when you take a look at what took place in Dayton in particular, in a matter of less than 60 seconds, 9 people were murdered, 27 people were seriously injured because of high-powered assault-style weapons with large magazines. We need to do something about it. When you look at the injuries that took place, when you read about the injuries of those individuals who were wounded in Dayton or were wounded in Pittsburgh or wounded other places, the devastation caused by these high-powered weapons is unbelievable, and it is a public health crisis. We need to do something about it. But these are just a few of the bills that would help the state of Pennsylvania better protect its residents. And while these we still would allow law-abiding individuals to basically own reasonable firearms. And I want to say that as we take a look at this agenda that goes beyond what the governor is able to do today, to the aspirational issues that we talk about in terms of a legislative agenda, some people say that it's unrealistic. I got to tell you what, there are people here today in this room who knows what can be done with powerful advocacy. We got a piece of legislation done, a meaningful piece of legislation in the last session of the legislature that takes firearms out of the hands of people who are subject to protection from abuse order. That piece of legislation will save hundreds of lives in Pennsylvania, and it is a tribute to the level of advocacy by the folks from Moms Demand Action and Ceasefire PA. They showed us the roadmap. We can get this done. It is possible to do things in Pennsylvania legislatively. They showed us how to do it. But we still today have that agenda in front of us. But today, Governor Tom Wolf took important steps for a safer world. I'm so grateful to him to be able to take the steps that he has within his power and to help us and to encourage us in the legislature to take it to the next step. Tomorrow, let us carry this inspiration forward and ask the question again, what are we doing to reduce gun violence? Thank you, Governor Wolf.
So I am going to sign the executive order, then I'll come back and all of us will take questions from the podium.
You're watching Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. He is signing gun violence executive order as the politicians there have been discussing. According to a press release from the governor's office, it says that this order is aimed at making unprecedented sweeping changes to executive branch agencies and programs to better target the public health crisis of gun violence in Pennsylvania. Among the things it does, Cabinet Secretaries and Charles Ramsey joined him. The former police commissioner in Philadelphia will be chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. He's going to use his expertise in a new role advising the executive branch on implementing these changes. The executive order names Ramsey as a senior advisor charged with coordinating and facilitating gun violence reduction. So just to clarify, I believe he was already the chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and now he's taking on a senior advisor role.
Okay, any questions?
Governor Wolf, is this a move?
Let's listen to the questions being asked to Governor Wolf here.
You discussed the other day.
Well, it's two things. I have certain authority things that I can do, coordination that I can foster within the administration, and that's what I'm doing. But I also, as I said, I need the legislature to act, and there are 4 specific things that I would like to see. I think, as Representative Harris pointed out, that's a start. There are a lot of things we need to do. I think Representative Frankel said there are, 24 bills? So there are a lot of things, a lot of conversation that has to take place in the legislature. I'm doing this because this is what I can do, but we still need the legislature to act. We still need the legislature to consider these bills that I think will make our Commonwealth safer.
How much will this cost, and where will the money come from for these various initiatives?
The only cost, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of cost. The cost again, this is sort of the same thing we talked about last time. I think there'll be some free lunches as the council meets. But the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency has a budget, and a lot of the expenses, if not all, will come from that. But I will get you, if there's anything more than that, I'll get that to you. Anything else? Yes.
Governor Wolf, the council is tasked in part with reviewing current background check processes and making recommendations for improvement. Do you feel like the literature that's available on best practices for background checks is inadequate, or what is exactly the goal with that particular review of background checks?
Well, in some cases, they don't exist at all. And you can do a private sale, for example. Not all gun shows do, but not all private sales really have a background check. And so we need to strengthen that. Pennsylvania does not have a universal background check, as far as I know. We have to implement one. There certainly isn't one in the United States, but I think we can start here at the Commonwealth. So I'm not sure that we have much of anything in place right now, but we certainly need to do a better job than we're doing. Any other question? Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention, coordinating a system of focused police deterrence in neighborhoods and cities where violence is most extreme. Have conversations begun yet with police departments, and do you imagine that will include some of the smaller departments, since there are so many municipal police departments?
Yeah, and that's the point. I'll let Colonel Vanchek, maybe you might want to weigh in on this, but I think one of the things is that there's a big data sharing component here, which is simply making information available to local, regional, and state police officials and federal to make sure that we're doing the right things in the right places at the right time. Too many times we have information in one silo in law enforcement, and that information isn't shared, and so preventive action that might have prevented something from happening doesn't take place. So this data sharing is really an important part of this, and it's not something that costs anything. It's just really taking information that already exists and making sure it's distributed and shared in an appropriate manner. Did I miss anything there?
We'll be able to provide additional training also through the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission too, where we have control over what goes into the programs for the training of the officers. So.
Mark.
On the gun buybacks, I think the language I saw was that the state police would work with gun buybacks and do them. Does the state police do them now? Do you plan to coordinate gun buybacks?
Right now,
What's
we
going to be
do
different?
allow people to turn weapons into us if they so desire, but we will work on a program to have an actual buyback program, yes.
What will that look like? Any idea?
We don't know at this point. We're going to have a task force and put together and work on that as we roll it out.
What can the state police currently do to monitor hate groups and white nationalists, and what new things will this order let them do?
That domestic terrorism. Yeah.
We have a fusion center, our intelligence center, which is run. We have about 40 different agencies involved. They all work together, side by side, tearing down silos. They share information. We have FBI, ATF-E involved, Department of Homeland Security. They all work together, and we get stuff in on a daily basis. We also have the See Something, Send Something app that's out there. If you see something, you put that information into that app. You can send a text, you can send a photograph. That information goes directly into our intelligence center, which is open 24/7 round the clock. We have analysts there working side by side with troopers.
That's going to be expanded?
We will look into expanding that as well.
Yeah, you had a question.
Briefly back to data sharing.
Yep.
Is that data all criminal in nature, or specifically what are we talking about? And how is it used to?
Yeah, it can be anything. Patterns, for example, you see certain buildup. I don't know. Commissioner Ramsey's not here, but for example, when there's somebody posts something on Facebook and says, let's all meet on South Street in Philadelphia, and that's information that says, okay, maybe we ought to show up there and see if there's something we can do to maybe diminish the tensions. So it's not that's not criminal information. It's just sort of stuff that's saying, okay, this has been posted. It looks like this is something that we need to pay attention to. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. But those are the kinds of things where data exists, but we're not sharing it, and we're not sharing it with people who actually are in a position to maybe go to a place and say, let's see if we can do something to moderate the tensions here.
Attaching profiles of people's social media usage to other...
No, we're not going to. This is not about profiling. This is about taking information that's out there in the public that we already have and saying, let's see if we can do a better job of using it to prevent the kind of things that destroy lives.
Dr. Levine, suicide prevention. What's going to be done under the executive order to increase awareness, prevent suicide?
Rachel, you want to...
So I'm very pleased to participate with Secretary Miller, Secretary of the Department of Human Services, on the Suicide Prevention Task Force. So that task force was established a number of months ago. And so as the Governor mentioned, though, we will be looking at a suicide death review committee as well, which would live in the Department of Health. So, violence has many different forms, and gun violence involves, of course, the shootings and the murders that have been talked about, but it also involves too many suicides. And so they are related, and so we'll be working on that. Secretary?
Oh, I think that's perfect.
Really? You never say that about stuff I say.
Anything else? I want to stay. I'm a big concern. So this is, for some of us, very, very important moment. And I don't know how you're going to report it, but be very clear. The legislation is a part of a conversation. That is not why we're here. We're here because people are scared to death about when you guys go to Harrisburg or Washington, you'll debate forever about a gun. But in the meantime, what can you do? This is about organizing government in ways it's never been organized before. I think the information about online data, Philadelphia is very used to CompStat. So Philadelphia is probably familiar with it. But rural Pennsylvania doesn't have a clue about where some of the hot spots are. So it's not about personal invasion. As it relates to the issues of handguns as opposed to assault weapons and those bans, those are all significant in that regard. And most important for people who have suffered this, and there's a bunch of us who've had this in our districts, this is about, for the first time, people in these districts being heard. The national media does a lot about the mass shootings. They do very little about human beings that die every day. And there's a lot that government can do to organize itself around that. And so, frankly, for the first time ever,
I mean, Jordan Harris's tears are only matched by, Movetta's or Representative Kim's or Joanna McClinton's. We all have that. And so, we don't want to continue to go to these little pillars of testimony. It's not about, people in Philadelphia are not being killed by white supremacists. So, it's nice to talk about it. That's sexy to write about. People being killed by their neighbors. It's not a shock that somebody had an A-27 in their basement to people in North Philadelphia. It might be to you. But when you have 300 people die every year in Philadelphia, they have access to illegal weapons and heavy-duty illegal weapons. What's shocking is that we've never gotten to that point to talk about it. And so I don't want this moment to be missed upon the fact that there's all these sort of things that we talk about normally. We want to drive the conversation about all Pennsylvanians and how significant all these lives are and the manner in which they're occurring. And this man has given life, his staff has given life to those who are voiceless. And so I apologize for interrupting, but I didn't want to be lost on some of the things that everybody else writes about every day. I wanted to be back on what we came here for, and that's to give protection to those who feel like there's no protection from the government because people don't think that they count that much. So thank you. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. Thanks, Governor.
Bless you, man.
You've been watching a news conference where Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf was signing an executive order related to gun violence. Sadly, we have a lot of gun violence to report on here in Philadelphia in the last couple days. Let's get you to some of that. As we look live at the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. This morning we learned the names of the 6 officers injured in Wednesday's police shooting. They are Joshua Burkett, Michael Gunter, Sean Parker, Nathaniel Harper, and Ryan Waltman, and Justin Matthews. I apologize if I mispronounced any of those. 3 of them are assigned to the Narcotics Strike Force. The other 3 are assigned to local police districts. They range in ages from 26 to 43 years old, and their experience on the force ranging from 2 years to 19 years. We're also learning more about the suspect as you'll see him come out here. This was at the end of the standoff the other day. Maurice Hill was no stranger to law enforcement. The 36-year-old has an extensive history of arrests dating back to his late teens, and he's been in and out of both state and federal prison. Records show arrests for illegal possession of guns, assaults, and dealing drugs. The district attorney, Larry Krasner, says the offenses all happened before he took office.
The system had multiple contacts with this man, and the system, following its policies and its philosophy at those times, did things that obviously did not stop this incident.
The region's U.S. attorney, Bill McSwain, says he may bring federal charges against Hill, and a representative for the ATF says they are anxious to track all the guns used during the shooting. William McSwain, I should say. Yesterday, lawmakers gathered for a press conference following the shootings and standoff. They want stronger gun control legislation. Fox 29's Kelly Rule has more in this report.
Governor Tom Wolf will be signing an executive order today aimed at stopping gun violence, and this is something that's been in the works for a while, but it comes after an emotional, fiery press conference yesterday where both city and state leaders said they are fed up with gun violence in the city, and they feel that those 6 officers shot, should have never had to deal with that Wednesday. And here is in part what they are talking about. 36-year-old Maurice Hill, let's get to some video of him. District Attorney Larry Krasner made a point yesterday to say that he will receive charges that will likely keep him behind bars for the rest of his life, but he also said the system failed him. Hill has been in and out of prison since he was 18, a career criminal, a convicted felon, and city officials say he should have never had a gun, let alone an AR-15, which police say he used to fire at them repeatedly, between 100 to 200 rounds. Now, at one point in yesterday's press conference, Mayor Kenney said people are constantly losing their lives to gun violence in the city, and they need help. He feels much more needs to be done to help the police and make sure guns do not get in the hands of criminals. Governor Tom Wolf sharing similar words yesterday. Let's take a listen.
There are a lot of things that we need to do to address all of the issues that face people in places like Philadelphia. but we've got to start with figuring out ways of getting guns out of the hands of people like the jerk who shot 6 officers yesterday and last night here in Philadelphia.
Governor Wolf also calling for a federal assault weapons ban and is calling for the General Assembly to pass a law that mandates background checks by state police on all gun purchases. Now, that's certainly the type of action that was discussed yesterday, but as many also mentioned yesterday, it will take all hands on deck for something to be done. Back to you.
Thank you to Fox 29's Kelly Rule for that report. As you look live outside our studios at 4th and Market Streets. Sadly, we have more gun violence to report on, as I mentioned. Just last night in West Philly, 2 men were shot on Girard Avenue, and in East Germantown, another man was shot on Seymour Street. 5 people were shot yesterday afternoon in the Ogon section of the city. That shooting happened just 23 hours after and about 2 miles away from Wednesday's police shooting that left 6 officers wounded. Communities and leaders across the city want to get guns out of the wrong people's hands. One of the victims in the Conlin Street shooting is in critical condition. The shooting happened around 4:30 yesterday. The victims all ranging in age from 17 to 30 years old. People in the community are so frustrated with the constant violence, they're planning on moving, but they admit it's a problem across the entire city, no matter where you go.
You know, this frustrates you to no end. It really does. I mean, because year in and year, it's just 30 years for me of seeing the same thing. These numbers ebb and flow. It just doesn't seem to really make a significant dent. And that's what we need to be talking about. You know, what is it that needs to happen in this city, in this country, that's going to have a lasting effect and really create or cause a precipitous decline that continues, not happens from 1 year and then 3 years later it comes back up, because that's typically what we see in Philadelphia.
That, of course, wasn't just any member of the community. That was Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross speaking there. We had spoken to a resident who said, "That's what I'm saying, so where do you go? You keep running and you keep running. It's just like a plague. It's following us. It's us. We got to change." The other 4 victims in that shooting on Conlin Street are in stable condition. So far, no motive in the shooting. Turning to other news, in Gloucester County, police have arrested a woman who says she set a home on fire. Tahia Russell has been charged with attempted homicide, aggravated arson, and criminal mischief. Police received the call to South Barber Avenue back on August 4th. Firefighters rescued a dog from the home and quickly put out the flames. A man was taken to the hospital for burns and smoke inhalation. A 64-year-old man died while working on the roof of a Philadelphia home yesterday. Police say it happened yesterday morning on North 5th Street, just south of Girard Avenue. Police say the man worked for a private roofing company and was electrocuted while doing some wiring. He then fell 3 stories down. Medics rushed him to Temple University Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. License and Inspections is investigating. In New Jersey, the state is putting the brakes on a new law allowing terminally ill patients to end their own lives. Governor Phil Murphy signed the bill into law in April, but a judge put a temporary hold on it. The ruling comes after a doctor filed a lawsuit arguing the law violates constitutional rights as well as common law barring suicide. A hearing is scheduled for October. In Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, state police are searching for a woman who stole from a Walmart in Upper Hanover Township. It happened back on August 3rd. They say she put clothes from the store into a shopping bag, then went into the grocery aisle and put them on. She was stopped by Walmart security, but then asked to use the bathroom and left the store. She drove off in a red, newer model Chevrolet Silverado. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. And registration stickers on license plate may be making a comeback for drivers in Pennsylvania now that lawmakers are introducing a new bill. The annual stickers were eliminated more than 2 years ago, but state lawmakers say there are too many drivers in the state driving unregistered cars. That also means they may be driving without insurance. Some agencies, including PennDOT, are against the stickers. They say there's no evidence that getting rid of them impacted registration. Lawmakers are concerned about a rise in unregistered cars, but drivers are concerned those stickers will make them a target of theft.
Over 240,000 cars that aren't registered in Pennsylvania, and that can mean a whole lot of things.
Somebody stole yours in the past?
Yeah, right off the car, or try to take it off and only get half of it.
Lawmakers say the decline in registration is costing the state millions of dollars. And a historic home in Delaware County is picking up and moving, sort of. The colonial-style house is about 150 years old, and it's being shuffled about 60 feet to the right to make way for a twin dwelling. Crews plan to renovate it. It's in the Haverford Station Historic District.
The primary problem was trying to fit the 21st century lifestyle into what was a tiny building, but also one that wasn't laid out to have the sort of conveniences that we want today and the use of space that we want today.
Listen to this. The house didn't originally have any bathrooms, so those will be part of the renovations. Turning to some business news. The Food and Drug Administration wants you to see how smoking affects you and those around you, and Chick-fil-A dominates its competition by connecting with its customers. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more for you in today's Morning Business Outlook.
The stock market making a slow recovery. The Dow and the S&P 500 seeing small gains on Thursday, but could still finish lower for the week. The Food and Drug Administration wants to make you think twice about smoking. The FDA now calling for cigarette packages to show realistic images of what smoking can do to you and those around you. Health statistics would also accompany the graphic imagery. These additions are expected to be the biggest change to cigarette packaging in more than 35 years. Chick-fil-A continuing to dominate the fast food industry. The chain topping the list of a 2019 brand intimacy study released by marketing company MBLM. The study measuring consumers' emotional connection to 15 fast food places. Chick-fil-A went from being the runner-up over the last 2 years to kicking Starbucks out of first place. Rounding out this year's top 5, Dunkin', Starbucks, McDonald's, and Taco Bell. For more, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Tracy Carrasco.
And good news for you if you have money in the stock market. As Tracy said yesterday, the stocks were up slightly yesterday. Today, they're up substantially. The market currently up 1.25%, just about, at 317 points up. The Dow Jones Industrial back to 25,894, so near 26,000. All the major indices are up. NASDAQ is up 116 at the moment, or approximately. The S&P 500 up 38, and oil, I believe that's the price of oil, is at 54.76, plus about 0.25%. All right, let's get you a quick look at your weather before we go. It's going to be a hot weekend. Is our Scott Williams, as we look live at the Benjamin Franklin Parkway there, our meteorologist Scott Williams says another heat wave is on the way. The heat index by Sunday will be around 100 degrees. Your weekend outlook looks hot and humid with some pop-up storms. We'll get you to all those details in a moment. First, let's take a live look at Ultimate Doppler radar. You'll see not much activity, a little bit of scattered showers out over central Pennsylvania. Your current temperatures Right now it's 79 in the city. Mostly 79s, upper 70s, some 80s there in Delaware and South Jersey. Mount Pocono, the cool spot at 68, as it normally is. Northeast temperatures, you got some yellow and orange on there with the 80s, 81 in Ocean City, Maryland, 80 in Charlottesville, Virginia, 80 in Clarksburg, West Virginia. A little bit cooler up in Maine, 63 in Bangor. Your U.S. temperatures. Well, that's a little interesting. Miami at 82, Tampa 79, but then 90 in New Orleans, 86 in Houston, 88 in Dallas. So some of that heat in the south. A little bit cooler out over the Florida Panhandle, but a lot of heat down there in the southeastern United States and south. Cooler on the west coast, 61 in San Francisco, 64 in Portland, where the sun is coming up this morning. Up for a little while anyway. Right now, the temperature change, we're up slightly from the same hour yesterday in most of the area. Winds are calm in some places, as high as 10 miles per hour in Dover and 8 in Wildwood. So not much to speak of in terms of gusts. Looks like a bit of a sea breeze down the shore as the winds come out of the east. Visibility pretty good across the area, 6 and 7 in Reading and Lancaster respectively, but not too bad overall. Not like that fog we had to start out Thursday morning. Satellite showing some of that cloud cover out over the central part of the state into Lancaster and Berks counties, and maybe up into the Lehigh Valley a little bit. Here's a look at your Fox Futurecast. Looks like we do have the potential for some more spotty showers today, and even some more carrying over into early Saturday morning. Your 7-day forecast from the Fox 29 Weather Authority. A pop-up storm today, 85, but it looks like an 8 on our forecast by the numbers. Saturday, an isolated storm, 89, 73 for an overnight low. It looks like we're not going to get below 72 in the 7-day forecast at night, so not the best sleeping weather, but not intolerable either. 89, isolated storm on Saturday as the Phillies continue their homestand after that sweep of the Chicago Cubs in dramatic fashion last night with Bryce Harper's walk-off grand slam, I think it was. Sunday, hot with a pop-up, 92 as the Phillies wrap up their homestand. Monday, hot with a pop-up, 93. Tuesday, hot with a pop-up, 92. Stays toasty Wednesday at 90, and we finally get some heat relief on Thursday of next week, 85. I believe this is at least our 5th heat wave of the year, so we're going to swelter at least once more. Remember to download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to get the latest conditions, hourly conditions, as you are out and about. You can see our futurecast as well as recent radar images and stay abreast of the latest in the forecast. And that's going to do it for us today on Fox 29 News Now. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a fantastic weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. We are live each morning after Good Day Philadelphia. Come to you for at least an hour, try and get you out to the latest news events, what's going on, and get you some updates on the stories from the morning. So enjoy the rest of Friday. Get outside, enjoy some of that hot weather, and we'll see you back here Monday.